Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Octant community meeting. We got a bunch of stuff that we want to cover today. I'll be sharing the agenda notes so everyone can follow along. Give me one sec here. There we go. So the first topic of the agenda is that 0.10 was released. Wayne, you wrote a fantastic blog post about it. You want to talk about it?
There was a blog post for the release. It's got words, but yeah. So the release came out. As mentioned previously in the last community meeting, the main big things were adding the container exec and the workload viewer, and then alongside of that was a bunch of other quality of life fixes that were in there. All that's up in the release notes, which are available linked from the blog post there. Yep. And so, yeah, we have some bugs that shook out of that we are addressing now. Well, most of them are already addressed, but the main ones are, we're going to be, what were they? Let's see. I gotta take a look at what's in our changelogs folder here. Oh yeah, so we are fixing some failures around pod metrics for the workload viewer. There was some community member who fixed some typo we had in the build scripts around Go module. We removed the duplicate pod log that shows up when you're viewing pod logs. We fixed a CRD watcher erase condition. Also fix the workload navigation path when you're running Octant on Windows, and we fixed some access error type assertions for the CRD watcher. And we're also going to be doing a fix for some of the access denied and unauthorized access API spam that happens when you have credentials and then they go away while Octant is still running. Those are currently in the works. So when all those other things I mentioned first were landed, the auth fixes are in progress by myself right now. So once those are in place, we will be cutting a bug fix release, and that's it for that.
Yeah, let me add some color to those auth issues. Kubernetes API is not made for these types of. We're actually using the Kubernetes API in a way that it was never imagined to be. And a lot of, besides control, so controllers are easy. A controller says, I'm going to start up, it gets a set of credentials, and it does its thing. Kube control is easy. It's usually just a short request. So when credentials change, you don't have to worry about it because the request window is so short that it doesn't matter. And by the time they change, you can get new ones. Octant is long-term, and because of the way we use informers, it is very difficult to actually do this. So Wayne has a fix at a low-level fix that he's working on right now that actually goes through, and we're going to basically use a leveling to say, oh, wow, you're getting way too many auth errors. Maybe we should do something about this. And then at the high level, I have a PR open that will, once we get the test worked out, that it actually looks at it at a totally different way. It says, you changed a kubeconfig file in your kubeconfig change. We don't know what happened, but we are going to assume that whatever happened changed how our state of the world. So we'll just reload that thing. So both of these together should basically get rid of that case. And the interesting thing is that every other tool, so whether it be CUI, or that preview infra tool, or any other, or K9S, they're all going to run into this issue. And ultimately, it should be fixed upstream, but we're not going to wait 6 months to a year to get a fix in. So we'll get one in now.
Awesome. You want to talk about the Electron prototyping as well?
Oh, yeah. So that's coming as well. So I'll give you a little backstory on this. When we created Octant, yeah, it was a good idea. Let's put this in a web page. But the problem with web pages is that there's two major problems with web pages. One is that when people see a web page, they assume that it's a simple web service behind it. And if it's a simple web service behind it, oh, we can just throw this in a cluster. You do not want to run Octant in a cluster. Just want to tell you that right now. And the reason why is the way that we keep Octant fast and the way that we try to keep down from the abuse of the API is that we use informers. So Octant technically is like a controller that you have that manages your deployments in there. Octant just can look at everything. And because of that, so if you have, let's say, 50 resources in your cluster out of the box from whenever you start your cluster, and then you add a few more. So let's say you're up to like 90 now. What Octant has to do is it has to create an informer for every single one. And not only that, because everyone doesn't have access to everything in the cluster, we have to create a new informer for every single API resource for every single namespace that you touch. And normally, they can be kind of small, but if you have a large amount of namespaces or something like that, they can get very big, very quick. So we really don't like the idea of running Octant in a cluster. I think there's something we can do to get it running in a cluster, but it would not be the Octant project itself. So we want to move it closer to an application, and there's other reasons behind this too. On your Mac and on Linux and on Windows, you have this, depending on your window manager in Linux, you have access to a status bar. We would like to take advantage of that. We want Octant to be running all the time, but seeing the dashboard is not super useful all the time. We can show a much shorter status, and we can actually just use a notification facility in your operating system to tell you these things. You can't do that from a web browser. We actually have to take this out of a web browser. And there's some assumptions that we are making right now that make Octant hard to write, that it's in a web browser. If we moved it to an application, we can actually say, you know what, we don't have to assume anymore. We know exactly what this thing is doing, and we can now put it in an application. And right now, I looked at WebView and this Go thing called Electron, and they're great solutions if you want something super simple that doesn't have menu bars. So now we're looking at Electron, and with Electron and Octant, yeah, it's gonna, and you need the size is you're downloading a Chrome browser, so it's gonna be a little bit large, but just because it's Electron doesn't mean it has to be crazy on CPU like other applications out there. There are things that we can do to make that better. So we are now looking at, if we take it out of the browser, what does it look like? Well, we lose a back button. So we're going to redesign parts of Octant to make it fit better in an application that assumes that it has one main window, and that's it. So that work will be ongoing. There's going to be some preview work that will hit master over the next, hopefully by the end of this week. But it will, we'll probably boot it from a new binary, so you won't ever see it. But we're definitely going to be starting that right now.
That's really cool. Did you, so you talked about performance and wanted to make sure that it's not as slow as other desktop apps has been. Is that still an issue for Electron apps in general?
No, I think that's FUD in general. I mean, all right, I'll just come out and say it. People hate Electron apps because of what Slack does. And if you look at Slack and what they're trying to do, that is one implementation of Electron. But take another Slack app or Electron app you don't think about. Use VS Code, that's Electron. And is it as fast as a native editor? Well, if you get down to and you want to count milliseconds, probably not. But for usability, yeah, it's pretty good. And that's what we're looking at. And there's work that we need to do to get there. One thing that we do right now is we're an Angular app, and we always assume to be local, so we cheat it, but there's things that we can do to make our apps load quicker. And there's things that we can do when we don't have to make assumptions about latency or anything like that to actually make it more performant. So hopefully we don't fall into that trap. but we expect our users to tell us if we are. And I actually am probably one of the heaviest users of Octant ever. I mean, I have it up right now. I have it always up. If it bothers me, we'll definitely get it fixed.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
So the next item is Angular 9. So this came up when we were looking at adding the Monaco integration. Monaco, for people who don't know, is just it's an open source kind of IDE that is written in JavaScript and TypeScript specifically. And we're currently running on Angular 8, and the latest version of Monaco. And Angular 8 is using a TypeScript version of less than 3.6 and greater than 3.4. Greater than or equal to 3.4. And the current version of Monaco requires a TypeScript version of 3.7. And Angular 8 will not be supporting that. So to ensure that we can use like the latest and best version of Monaco, because we'd have to go to like a year-old version if we wanted to bring it into Angular 8, we're going to be working on moving over to Angular 9. Angular 9 is currently in pretty deep release candidate status. It's like RC 10 or 11 at this point, and it's due to be out and released at any moment. Many people are already upgraded from 8 to 9, even though it's still RC status. So, but that's something to expect coming here in the coming days and weeks. Is that work will be starting to happen so that we can get that Monaco integration in place.
And then also keep in mind that Monaco is the text editing engine for VS Code.
Yep.
So actually, we didn't say. Did we say why? Why?
So for those who don't know, the reason we're adding, so there's some issues that you can find on the GitHub repo. They are about getting a code editor into Octant. And the reason why we're doing this is so that we can start to think. The first step is going to be to put Monaco in read-only to replace the existing YAML editor or YAML viewer that you see now. From there, once we have Monaco in place, we can then start to think about how we want to and what we want to provide as editing capabilities within Octant. And this includes things like smart editing. So as you're typing out some edits to a YAML file and you provide, say, a secret or a config, if that's not available, if that's not present, or you don't have access to it, the editor can highlight it in red in real time and tell you like that's incorrect name. And then to go even further, potentially, if you do have access to everything, we could be pulling a list and then we could say, hey, you have a typo, obviously, did you mean this one? Or we can do type ahead and kind of smart editing facilities around YAML editing. So that is the reason we're getting the Monaco text editor in place. Initially, it will be read-only, and then we will kind of go from that work forward to decide how it looks as a full-on editor and what type of features we're going to have.
And this all comes from, there's one feature that I hate for every piece of software that supports Kubernetes, where if you create a CRD and you're typing your CRD, no piece of software knows where it is. Golang does the closest or the Kubernetes plugin for IntelliJ does the closest by saying, you can specify what CRDs you have, and then we can try to guess that. What we'll do inside of Octant is something different that no one's doing, is that we'll actually just go look at your OpenAPI specification for the current cluster you're in. So guess what? We can verify everything your cluster knows about. So hopefully no more squiggly lines for whenever you create CRDs. So this will be interesting. This tool will definitely open up a new space for us, and it also positions us to do something that people have been asking about for a long time. Why can't I create objects with Octant? Well, because we didn't have a good interface for it. And now with an editor and then the ability to upload YAML from local, we will definitely have that. So now you'll be able to create it in the browser or in the application. You'll be able to actually upload it, and then you'll be able to edit it to your heart's content. So that'd be kind of neat.
That's a really cool feature. Any questions or comments regarding this part? No one? Everyone just loves it? All right, cool. Next up, we have a community member and Harbor maintainer, Daniel Pacak. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's Daniel Pacak, but Pacak is, I accept both, you know.
You killed his name.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
That's fine.
Daniel.
Hi. So thanks, Michael, for letting me know that there is a community meeting. Actually, the thread started with a direct message, and I shared with Michael that, well, when I saw Octant, I also picked it up as a development tool. I started using it. But as you might realize, I am from the security company, Aqua Security, and we are like a prototyping or trying to make the security visibility and awareness even closer to the developers. So that's why I would like to share with you today the plugin that we prototype. It's a very early stage, but you might find it interesting. And I would like to take this opportunity to ask some questions. What are the capabilities of the current plugin API? What's possible, what's not? Because I watched the previous meetings, and I know that the documentation is, you know, just in the early stage. So let me quickly share the screen with a quick demo. That's, you know, and before the demo, I put together like 2 or 3 slides just to give the context why we do that thing. So yeah. Let's move to the first slide. So you've probably heard about the shift left approach in DevOps. People started using the term DevSecOps. So, you know, very early at the software development lifecycle, we would like to test software, catch defects, not wait for this long, you know, deployment testing. And the same we want to do with the security, but it's challenging, right? Because developers are typically busy with bug fixes, discovering new frameworks. So they have lots of things on their plate, but well, at the end, we want to evangelize, we want to promote this kind of a shift left approach of DevSecOps, right? So then I started thinking, well, let's say a developer is using kubectl. So at some point he realized, okay, I want to see the whole application, what's happening here and there. And since Octant is a wonderful tool for me, and it's very fast and displays like a standard Kubernetes resources, statuses, containers, why not displaying vulnerabilities, right? So by doing that, when I see my deployment, in this screenshot, you see like a Tomcat deployment, popular for Java web apps. You know, I don't have to wait for the build. I don't want to wait for the staging environment. I don't have to wait for the security advisor to tell me, hey, you can't use this base image because your pod, your workload is vulnerable. All right, so then I saw the plugin system and I said, okay, let's put together and see how it works. So this is what I came up with. There are 2 things. One is Octant plugins. You know it better than me. What is the Octant plugin, right? I can provide some UI and I can read some data from CRD in this case. So I have defined the custom resource, which represents the report of the scanned image. And the second part of it is, well, the risky is a name of a plugin. It's kind of a temporary name, like a code name. I don't have the real name, but the idea is that developers are familiar with kubectl. They might be familiar with the plugin. So let's develop the plugin that allows them to scan quickly the given workload. So let me switch to the terminal and show you how it works. So let's maybe first start with the UI. So I developed a plugin. It's registered here, and it currently only works for pods, but it can be easily extended to deployment, stateful sets, etc. So with this plugin, I want to contribute. Okay, let's take this Tomcat thing from the slides to be consistent. So I want to contribute, for example, here with a new tab, and let's say I want to contribute with some summary. I might have some more sensible defaults like not available or not scanned yet, but you know, just to give the idea, I was playing with it. So let's say I want to display the number of critical vulnerabilities in my image. And just for fun, I added as a separate card component. So how to get this data here? As I mentioned, there is a plugin. It's called kubectl risky for now. I could initialize it, which simply creates a CRD. I could clean up the data, so I'm less intrusive as possible. I don't want to modify existing workloads. I just want to have my own namespace, my own CRD, and link vulnerability reports with the corresponding workloads with the labels. And then I want to scan things, right? So let's get the pod. So let's scan this Tomcat thing. So if I do something like kubectl scan image, it's in the default namespace, but I could provide the namespace, doesn't really matter. The output is pretty verbose. What is happening behind the scenes is I'm scheduling a job, which is using our open source vulnerability scanner, which is called Trivi, the one actually which we also integrated with Harbor. So this one is taking the pod, listing containers, and is running the job to scan them, getting out the JSON report, and then saving the report in a CRD. It takes a while, mainly the Docker pull. Bear with me for a second. And that's the thing I love. It's auto-refreshing immediately. I can see the scan results here. Even if I don't implement the plugin, it's pretty useful for the command line freaks, right? Because they can say, okay, get ISR, which is a short name for image scan report. Okay, we have only one. If I show labels, you see that it has some labels that links it to the pod that we requested for scanning. It's this Tomcat, right? And in the end, we could also get it as a YAML file, right? So this is a list of vulnerabilities that Trivi found for the workload, right? We could, so I played a bit, we could scan container images which refer to private registries. We could also scan workloads or pods with 2 containers. I didn't pay much attention to user experience. I just wanted to get the data and see if it works and how fast is it in terms of rendering and in terms of scanning. So let me scan quickly one more. This one is with 2 containers. You can see I'm spawning scheduling two Kubernetes jobs. One is scanning Mongo image, another is scanning Nginx image. This kind of a workload probably doesn't make sense, but it's for demonstration purposes. And if we go here, you see that there are jobs and corresponding pods running. And at the end, if we go here, we will see there's one image and another one, right? So yeah, that's basically what I have when it comes to demo. If you have any questions, we can stop here. If not, I have a couple of questions in regards to extending a little bit what we have now.
By the way, Daniel, this is great work. I really appreciate the fact that you identified an area where you can extend Octant and add some capabilities from Trivi. So thank you for all the work. This is awesome. Yeah, go ahead and ask your questions.
Yeah, so if there are no questions for the plugin, I have a bunch of questions. For example, we also for the given workload, there might be one too many containers. And so far, I came up with a vulnerabilities tab. But I was wondering whether it's possible to extend and contribute some UI components at the container level. So far, I saw that you can contribute to configuration and the status, but you cannot contribute to the container, or at least I couldn't find this kind of information. So that's one question. And another thing is, I was wondering if in such a custom plugin, I can contribute to like a buttons and action handlers, for example, to rescan or maybe acknowledge or accept some of the vulnerabilities. Let's say this is a false positive, right? And I just, in order to see what's possible in Octant, those are 2 things that I'm wondering if it's possible to do or not.
I can answer those questions. So the first one was you wanted to add new components. What kind of components what did you want to add?
Yeah, so for example here, this is a good example. We have one pod with 2 containers, and I scanned 2 images, right? One is Nginx, one is Mongo. And then I'm trying to display the summary, like what's the total number of critical vulnerabilities. For now, I display the summary for the whole pod, assuming both. But let's say I want to display the summary grouped by the container. So display something similar right here. And so this is one of the use cases. So I would like to, for example, if someone is reviewing the spec of this pod, instead of going here, because I don't really know why these 2, from which container it comes from, until I go there and see, all right, this is from Nginx, right? I found 2 critical vulnerabilities. I want to display this information as close to the container as possible.
Yeah, we don't support that. And the way that it works right now is that we call all the plugins at the same time, and we allow them to do their thing. And then we also generate the rest of this view at the same time. And then whenever they're all done, then we actually create and we draw the screen. What you would need to do that is you would need access to the container itself or anything inside of here. And I'm not saying, I don't know when we would do this, but to solve this problem, one thing we could do is we could generate this screen before we call the plugins. We could actually send this. We could actually send this to with the plugin so that the plugin could actually augment any output that was generated. So you could actually overlay your content, which means you could actually throw another item in the summary that we're using inside of the container. So that's one way that we could solve that. And for the other one, so if you wanted to, by the delete button at the top right, we just don't expose that right now. There's a facility that draws those. We could actually expose that as another output from the print response, and then you could actually add it, and then you could add an action, which means that you could handle the action, and it wouldn't really matter.
Yeah, and that second, sorry to interrupt, that second one, the actions and buttons, we actually we have an open issue for that I put into the agenda. It's 421. So that's something that we've discussed in the past.
Okay, cool. All right, so
yeah,
I got it. So this means that the status card is somehow treated differently. Like you render it, and then the plugin can append the status items, whereas the container,
they are
actions are rendered dynamically. So they have a bit different life cycle, and that's why in the API I could contribute to configuration and status, but it's not that possible right now for the containers. This is what I got.
And that was because I was trying to be pragmatic. We know that configuration and status would exist. We don't know the container will exist because if you just want a deployment, there is no container, but there will still be configuration and status.
Yep.
So like I was saying before, if we made it so that you could augment, that you could actually extend something that we sent, maybe that's a possibility. We'd have to see how that would work. We are going to actually take a look at the plugin API. The story that I like to tell is that I literally wrote this on a Sunday one day because I was like, oh, this would be cool. And I wrote it and I put it in there and I'm like, well, it's useful. and so we have not put as much, we need more examples to figure out how it should be used. And then when we figure out how it should be used, then the API will start actually gelling and become a lot better than it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to put append some of the use cases I have in my mind.
That would be amazing if you did that. That would be super helpful.
Yeah, because I think those are not very crazy requirements, but extending it so I could have an interaction with because currently the kubectl risky plugin is pushing data, but some of the data like a pooling might be triggered through the actions in the UI. So that's why I found this use case important. And as I said, I would also like to do something with a particular row item in the tables components. All right, so, but as I understand, you're going to extend this, and if I can put more use cases, then we can figure out how to do it. it's not like a hard requirement for that as for now, but I'm happy to hear that you keep an eye on this.
Yeah, I would love to be able to make something to make this a much better experience for you.
Cool.
I have just a follow-up question on the vulnerabilities tab. When you say you want to be able to do something with the row item, you just mean like actually have that like an action, like a button or an action that you could click to make some API call to resolve it, or?
Yeah, one of the, let's say I'm crazy and I don't know how to do that, but let's say I want to auto fix this vulnerability, right? Let's say I can scan the image because I know from which Docker image it comes from. I can somehow see the history of a Docker image, and I see that it's installed with some package manager, right? And I know that it's fixed in some version. Some of those are fixed. And let's say I want to provide to the users the auto fix feature. This is one of, I don't know if it makes sense for this type of application or it makes sense at all, but I would like to do something with at the vulnerability layer, not at the scan report layer or not at the tab layer, but at the single row layer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a feature that we could use as well.
Yeah.
We didn't. The whole grid component is it's pretty basic. It can display in a grid. You can display any other you can display most other components that we can nest them inside of there. So, but we don't actually have do we have a button component? We have a button group. So we can do some things in there to make that better. But spell out your use cases in an issue. I would love to read them. And even if you have like badly made drawings, that's great too.
Yeah, sure. I can give you even like extending a little bit or drawing manually some additional items that I need on top of the screenshot.
Yep.
I can provide it as a comment to the existing issue, or I create a new one.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. Thank you.
All right. So thanks a lot. Thanks for the answers, and thanks for the opportunity for sharing this one. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover today? Wayne, Brian, Sam?
I wanted to bring up that this time slot is amazingly crazy for me. I had to make someone else unhappy to be here today. And I will try to make the promise that every other week I will make someone else unhappy so I can be here, because this is super important. But I'm just glad that I could be here for a few minutes, and actually I have to run because life. But I love that Wayne and Sam are putting in all the work. And Daniel, thank you for coming here and showing that you created something based off like something I made. And this is actually why we do it, is to help you be able to do what you want to do. So it was super amazing to me.
Yeah, thanks. That's a pleasure for me to meet the contributors and the creators. As I said in the beginning, this is outstanding dashboard. And you also mentioned K9S. So I'm glad that you are chasing what the others are doing. And yeah, I'll be looking and always like upgrading to the latest version. And if we can contribute from this security standpoint, and because I believe this is just at the beginning, there's a lot of things in Docker images, in Kubernetes deployments, and we need to expose this information, make it visible to developers, because they won't realize that the applications they develop are insecure. So yeah, this I chose this as a baseline, and believe me, I reviewed lots of existing tools, dashboards. I picked up this immediately, and I'm using it on a daily basis, not only for plugin developers or development, any other kind of software. I have Octant open in the background and watching my Kubernetes. So great work.
What we'll do is we'll take a pass at trying to understand, because everything you told me about doesn't actually sound like, oh, that would be super hard. It would actually not be very hard. And whenever we get to some level of success, we'll make some noise about it too, because I agree. We don't want to be experts at everything. We want to make a platform so people can actually create tools like security tools. So when we get this to a point, we'll definitely make some noise about it too to get you all some press.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good.
All right. And I have to go pick up a kid. So I will see you all later.
Thanks, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. Anything else, Wayne?
No, I was just going to see if anyone else had any questions or anything like that before we end it. Again, thanks, Daniel. That was really excellent. Thank you. All right.
All right, then we're done.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a
See
good
you.
one. Bye.
Take care. Bye.